Okay, let's unpack this. I mean, we usually operate under a pretty basic, almost fundamental assumption in life.
Right.
If you want to change something, you have to push it.
Right.
You apply force.
It's the default setting. Force equals mass times acceleration. It's, Newton's second law. It's baked into how we see the world.
Exactly. If I want to move a chair across the room, I have to shove it. If I want to change my career trajectory, I have to grind. If I want my team to perform better, I apply pressure.
We're obsessed with it.
We are. And it makes sense because in the macro world, the world of furniture and cars, that is, usually how it works. You apply energy, you get movement.
Usually. But the stack of sources we are diving into today poses a really, an uncomfortable and honestly a fascinating question.
Which is?
What if guidance is completely different from pushing?
And what if the most fundamental changes in reality and in our lives happen without any force at all?
It sounds like a riddle. Maybe a Zen koan or something.
Yeah.
But it's actually a physics problem that bleeds right into psychology and organizational management.
Okay, and before we get into the heavy stuff, we need to address where this is even coming from. This isn't our typical deep dive, like read 3 books and summarize kind of thing.
No, this is unique. We are looking at what the documentation calls a research-grade synthesis.
A research-grade synthesis?
Yeah, it's derived from a series of high-level sort of dialectic conversations between a human researcher and 3 different AI models, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude.
So it's a collective inquiry.
Exactly. The researcher is using these models to build a meta-theory called potentials without push. And because it's a synthesis of AI processing and human intuition, it connects dots that are usually miles apart.
Which is how we end up walking a fine line between quantum mechanics and how you run a business.
And that's usually where things go off the rails.
Oh yeah, into magic crystal territory. Quantum leadership usually sets off all my alarm bells.
And the sources are hyper aware of that. There's this massive critical disclaimer right at the top of the research stack. We're engaging in isomorphism.
Isomorphism. Okay, that's our word of the day. We need to nail this down so we don't sound crazy.
Right. It's a concept from math, from biology. It means looking for similarities in structure or form.
Not claiming they're the same thing.
Exactly. It's not claiming these things are biologically or physically identical. We're not saying your brain is literally a subatomic particle.
And we aren't saying your marketing team is a magnetic field.
Precisely.
Yeah.
We are saying that the way a quantum particle behaves offers a structural map, a pattern for how meaning behaves in your life.
Okay, so if we understand how a particle is guided without force, it might give us a blueprint for how a human mind can change without coercion.
That's the idea. So it's edge thinking. We're balancing rigorous skepticism with some open-minded curiosity.
Got it. Okay, let's jump into the deep end then. Register 1, the physics anchor.
We have to start with the dowel that holds this whole theory together. The Aharonov-Bohm effect.
1959. Yakir Aharonov and David Bohm. This is widely considered one of the most important discoveries in quantum mechanics, but I'd bet most people outside of a physics lab haven't heard of it.
Oh, for sure. It definitely isn't in high school textbooks. And to understand why it shocked the physics world, you have to remember the classical rule. A particle only changes if a force field touches it.
Local action.
Local action. You don't touch the ball doesn't curve.
Simple enough.
So Aharonov and Bohm proposed an experiment. You take a charged particle, an electron, and you fire it around a region containing a magnetic field. But, and here's the catch, the magnetic field is shielded. It is completely contained inside a cylinder.
So mathematically speaking, the magnetic field is 0 in the region where the particle is actually traveling.
Correct. As far as the particle is concerned, it is flying through empty neutral space. It feels 0 force. The B field, as physicists call it, is 0.
So classical physics would say the particle should just fly straight. Nothing happened to it.
That's what should happen. But that's not what happens. The particle experiences a phase shift.
A phase shift?
Its wave pattern changes. When it arrives at the detector on the other side, it has been altered.
Wait, so it changed its behavior without ever being touched by a force?
It changed because of the potential. In physics, the magnetic field is derived from something deeper called the vector potential. And even though the field was 0, the potential was not.
That is wild. This is like getting a sunburn when you're sitting in a windowless basement, just because the sun exists outside.
It's a bit more subtle, but yeah, that captures the weirdness. It proves that a potential, this mathematical structure underlying the field, can affect reality, even in the absence of a force field.
Has this been proven?
Oh yeah, replicated many times. Most famously by Akira Tanomura using superconducting shielding, just to prove there was absolutely zero magnetic leakage. It held up.
So reality was shaped by something that wasn't there in the classical sense.
And this is what David Bohm later called active information.
Active information. Okay, I want to drill down on this because the sources use a specific analogy here that really helped me visualize it. The ship on autopilot.
It's the best way to grasp guidance versus force. Imagine a massive ocean liner. It has these huge diesel engines providing the force. That's the energy.
Oh, like the push.
But the ship is being guided by a radar signal.
And that radar signal has almost zero energy, right?
Negligible. I mean, if that radar wave hit a cork floating in the water, the cork wouldn't even bob. It has no push. It has no shove.
Yeah.
But because the ship has a receiver, because it has form and an autopilot system, that tiny low-energy signal directs the massive energy of the engine.
So the signal isn't pushing the ship. The signal is informing the ship's own energy on where to go.
Exactly. That is guidance by information, not causation by force.
And the Aharonov-Bohm effect suggests this mechanism happens at the fundamental level of matter.
And the question this whole research stack asks is, does this happen to us?
Which brings us to Register 2, the phenomenological bridge, which is a fancy way of saying how this feels to be a human.
Right. And the sources draw heavily on the work of philosopher Tim Freke here to map this physics concept onto our lived experience. They define 3 streams of reality.
Okay, let's break those down. First, the soma stream.
That's the body, biological processes, the explicit order, to use Bohm's term.
The atoms, the neurons, the meat and
The
bones.
nice physical stuff.
Then there's the imaginal stream.
This is narratives, ideas, thoughts, the implicate order. It's the whole world of concepts.
And finally, the soul or meaning stream.
And this is the active information. This is the radar signal. The theory is that meaning guides the body and mind, just like that quantum potential guides the particle.
So it doesn't touch it with force, meaning has no mass. You can't weigh a story.
But it constrains and directs the massive energy of your life.
So if I change the meaning or the story of my life, I'm effectively changing the potential that's acting on me.
And that changes your trajectory without you having to push against yourself. The sources use the concept of tensegrity here.
Tensegrity, tension plus integrity, like those cool architectural structures, those Buckminster Fuller domes that look like they're just floating.
Exactly. They aren't held together by stacking bricks on top of each other. They're held together by continuous tension. The sources argue that a story, or a narrative, acts as the tension element in your psyche.
That makes a lot of sense. If I have a story that I am a victim of circumstance, every fact in my life, every spilled coffee, every missed promotion gets arranged by that tension wire.
It holds all these disparate data points in a stable structure. And if that story breaks...
The structure collapses, the bricks fall down.
Right. And this leads to a really provocative point in the research about something they call neural chauvinism.
I loved this phrase, neural chauvinism, is that basically stop thinking the brain is the boss.
Or at least stop thinking the brain is the container. The sources argue that consciousness isn't necessarily contained solely in your cranium. They describe the brain as a high bandwidth node in a distributed system of coherence.
Like a radio receiver.
Yes. If you smash a radio, the music stops playing from that box. A neurologist might look at the smashed plastic and say, see, the music was inside the box.
But we know the radio waves, the active information, are still there.
The brain tunes into the active information, the meaning, but it doesn't necessarily manufacture it all in isolation.
So if we want to change, we shouldn't just be trying to rewire the hardware.
We need to tune into a different signal.
Okay, so we have this elegant system, we have potentials guiding particles, and we have meaning guiding humans. It sounds beautiful and, frictionless.
I hear the but come in.
But change is hard. If it's just information, why can't I just decide to change my life and have it happen instantly? Why do I struggle? If I decide I'm going to run a marathon, I don't just glide into it. I hit a wall.
And this is where we hit Register 3, the mechanics of resistance. And this is where the conversation gets really practical. The sources bring in a new metaphor here to explain why we get stuck.
Which is?
The gyroscope. Angular momentum.
Okay.
Think of it as spinning gyroscope. Or even just a bicycle wheel spinning fast in your hands. If you've ever held one, you know that once it's spinning,
it resists being tilted. You try to turn it, and it fights you. It feels alive.
But it doesn't fight you because it's stubborn. It fights you because of physics. It has angular momentum.
And the sources say our habits, our identities, our soma streams are like high-speed flywheels.
We are spinning with the momentum of who we have been.
Exactly. You have 30 years of momentum being the person who procrastinates, or the person who avoids conflict. That is mass times velocity.
And here's the key insight. If you try to force a spinning gyroscope, if you apply what's called torque, it doesn't turn cleanly.
Right.
It precesses, it wobbles, it moves at a 90-degree angle to the force you applied.
Oh, that is such a perfect description of trying to change a habit. You say, okay, I'm going to start running every day. You apply force willpower. And what happens, you don't just change, you wobble. You act weird, you get backlash, you crash.
That wobble is precession. You're trying to torque a high-momentum identity system. Just deciding to change is like poking a spinning gyro with your finger. It creates chaos, not reorientation.
So are we doomed? Are we just stuck in our spin until we run out of energy and die?
Thankfully, no. The sources propose a solution. They call it the art of alignment, or rechoicing. And it involves this thought experiment about momentum transfer.
Okay, walk me through this. How do we turn the gyro without the wobble?
Imagine you have two gyroscopes. One is your act of life, spinning at full speed. You want to change its direction. But you can't touch it while it's spinning without causing chaos.
Right.
So imagine you could temporarily transfer that spin, that momentum, to a secondary system.
Okay, so I offload the energy, I let something else carry the load, and now my primary gyro is stationary.
Exactly. And a stationary gyro is easy to turn. You can reorient it with a feather, you point it in the new direction, the new potential, and then
You transfer the spin back.
you transfer the spin back. Now you are spinning at full speed with all your energy, but in a completely new trajectory. No wobble.
That sounds great in a physics thought experiment, but how do we do that in real life? We can't just pause our lives. I can't tell the world, hold on, I need to stop spinning so I can change my personality.
Well, the sources say we can,
Yeah.
but we need a very specific environment. They call it the superconducting container.
We're back to the physics metaphors. Superconductivity.
In physics, superconductivity allows electrical flow with zero resistance, no energy loss.
Okay.
In this theory, the superconductor is a social state. It was defined by trust and transparency.
So, to pause my momentum, I need a place where I don't have to defend myself.
That's it. Think about what resistance is in a relationship or a workplace.
Yeah.
It's defense. It's posturing. It's spinning the truth to look good.
Hiding mistakes. Pretending to know the answer when you don't.
That is friction. It generates heat. If you are in a high-trust relationship or a team with high psychological safety, you can say, I need to stop. I need to rethink who I am or what we're doing.
You can offload the momentum of being right or being in charge.
And because there is no friction, no judgment, no danger, you can reorient. You can choose a new story, a new active information.
And then you spin back up, you take that energy and apply it to the new path. But you can't do it alone.
You need the container to hold the space while you are stationary.
This connects to the final piece of the puzzle, the organizational flywheel. This comes from the Gemini and Claude sources discussing Jim Collins.
Right. So Jim Collins' flywheel concept is famous in business. It's about how great companies build momentum over time. But the sources make a critical distinction between a flywheel and a gyroscope.
What's the difference? I mean, they're both spinning wheels.
A gyroscope is about stability resistance to change. It keeps the ship level. A flywheel is about stored energy compounding momentum. It drives the machine forward.
Okay, I see. One keeps you upright, the other drives you forward.
But for an organization, they are often the same wheel. The thing that makes a company successful, it's momentum, it's culture, it's way we do things around here.
It's also the thing that makes it so hard to pivot when the market changes.
The classic Kodak moment. They were spinning so fast on film, they couldn't turn to digital.
The wobble killed them. They tried to torque the gyro while it was spinning at max speed.
And if they'd had a superconducting container,
If they'd had a culture of high psychological safety where leadership could say, stop the engines, the territory has changed, let's reorient.
they might have survived. But usually, resistance is high. People are afraid to speak up.
If you say, hey, I think we're going the wrong way, you get fired.
That's resistance.
Yeah.
That destroys the superconductor. So the momentum creates a crash instead of a pivot.
It's really amazing how this all stacks up. We started with a particle avoiding a magnetic field, and we ended up in a conversation about corporate culture.
That's the power of isomorphism. The patterns repeat. The universe seems to favor these structures of flow without force at every level.
So let's review the registers before we wrap up. This was a dense one.
Okay, so register 1, physical. The Aharonov-Bohm effect proves that potentials guide particles. Information matters just as much as force.
Register 2, phenomenological. meaning guides experience. Our stories act as the active information for our lives, holding us together like tensegrity structures.
We are wireframed by our narratives.
Yeah. And register 3, practical. To change the story, you have to deal with the angular momentum of the old story. You can't just torque it. You need a superconducting container trust and transparency to reorient without that wobble.
It's a tuning fork moment, as the sources call it. It's not a finalized theory of everything.
No, and it shouldn't be treated as one.
It's a research question. Helps us ask, when does guidance work better than force?
It really challenges that whole hustle culture mindset. Push harder. Maybe pushing harder is just creating more wobble.
If you want to change your trajectory, do you need a bigger engine or do you need a better radar signal?
That is the big takeaway for me. We spend so much money on engines and so little time on the radar.
And even less time building the container that allows it to change the radar settings in the first place.
So here is our final thought for you to take with you today. We want you to think about active information in your own life.
Ask yourself, what is the invisible potential, the story or the narrative that is currently guiding your trajectory? You probably aren't even thinking about it. You're just spinning.
And if you wanted to change it, if
Yeah.
you wanted to reorient that gyroscope, do you have the superconducting container to do it? Do you have the relationships, the trust, the support system that would let you pause, recalibrate, and spin up again without the wobble?
Because without the container, reorientation is just a crash waiting to happen.
A lot to mull over. Potentials, flywheels, and the physics of trust. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure.
See you next time.